Hello, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Philosophy of the Human Person. I will present the definition of philosophy and briefly discuss its major branches, but specifically, I will address the question, what is philosophy? So, what is philosophy? Now, I would like to start off with etymological definition. When we say etymological definition, this is the very origin of the word. So, philosophy, particularly in Western philosophy, comes from the two Greek words philia, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. Thus, etymologically speaking, philosophy means the love of wisdom. And when you say love, in this context, it's understood as the strong desire to a particular object. When we say wisdom, this is understood as a correct application of knowledge. So, philosophy as the love of wisdom, at least in this context, could refer to the strong desire of the human person to possess knowledge and apply it correctly. So it's not coincidence, therefore, that most philosophers in the ancient world, particularly in Greece, India, and China, were sages or wise men. Think, for example, Socrates. Think, for example, Gautama Buddha. Think, for example, Confucius. And take, for example, Lao Tzu also renders as Lao Tzu. Traditionally, however, we may define philosophy as science that studies beings in their ultimate causes, reasons, in their principles through the aid of human reason alone. So it's defined as a science that studies beings in their ultimate causes, reasons, in their principles through the aid of human reason alone. So when we say being or beings, these are all things that exist. It may be material or immaterial. When we say material, um, we could say refer to stones, trees, persons, tricycles. Immaterial, these are notions of God, soul, and spirit. So we have the basic questions in philosophy. And these are, what is the origin of the world or everything that exists? Why do these things exist rather than not to exist at all? Is there God? If so, how can we justify the goodness of God in the face of evil? What is the meaning and purpose of life? Why do we have to suffer? If one is suffering from an unbearable pain, such as cancer, is it morally right to resort to euthanasia or assisted suicide? So, if we have to look at the basic questions of philosophy, these are basic and important questions. Meaning and purpose of life. Why do we have to suffer? If there is there God, and why do things exist? And one of the philosopher called Jaspers, a famous German philosopher, existential philosopher, understands discipline of philosophy such as it's more on in which questions are more important than answers because answers themselves will in turn become questions. So when you start to philosophize rather, is more on when we start to question. That is why when a person keeps on questioning, we usually say, "Oh, you are philosophizing," in our vernacular or in our kawika Tagalog, ka isang pilosopo because matanong. Pag matanong isang tao, isang pilosopo. And Carl Jasper says questions are more important than answers because answers themselves will in turn become questions. And as we have addressed the question, what is philosophy? I will now proceed to discuss its major branches. So there are four major branches of philosophy, and namely, these are metaphysics, epistemology, we have ethics, and logic. Now we go to different um, major branches of philosophy. First, let's go to metaphysics. When we say metaphysics, coming from the two Greek words meta, which means beyond and after, while physica, this is about physical nature. Hence, etymologically speaking, metaphysics means the study of things beyond the physical. That is, concepts or things that cannot be experienced, such as the concepts of God, freedom, and so on. Metaphysics is commonly understood as the foundation of philosophy. Okay, and that is according to Aristotle. So, Aristotle um, named metaphysics as the first philosophy. Um, why? Why did he call that metaphysics the first philosophy? Because metaphysica, which literally means after physics, actually designate that part of our total works which came after those chapters that deal with physics. However, it was misappropriated later by the medieval commentators on classical texts as that which is beyond the physical. This over time, metaphysics has been understood as the study that which exists beyond the physical. Now, there are also two um, categories, or metaphysics is subdivided into two, namely general metaphysics and specific metaphysics, or special metaphysics. Now we have the four general metaphysics. We have ontology, while special metaphysics we have cosmology, psychology or anthropology, and natural theology or theodicy. Okay, let's go now to ontology or general metaphysics. When we say ontology, is derived from the Greek words anto, okay, or onto, which means being, on that is everything that exists, and logos is which means knowledge or study. Note, however, the term logos in ancient Greek scholarship have different connotations. For example, Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher of the late 16th century BCE, understands logos as reason or the underlying principle of all that is. Okay, for him, logos is reason or the underlying principle of all that is. But going back, however, ontology, therefore, is the specific branch of philosophy that studies beings and their ultimate causes, reasons, principles through the aid of reason alone. In other words, ontology studies the first principle of the essence of all things. Okay? Okay? Studies being in their ultimate causes, reasons, and principles through the aid of reason alone. Here are the basic questions of ontology. What is being? Why do things exist rather than not to do exist, rather than not to exist at all? What is the meaning and nature of reality? What is the underlying principle of all that exists? Is there nothing? Now we go to special metaphysics, and we have cosmology from the Greek word cosmos, which means the world, and logos, which means study. And when we say cosmology or cosmos, logos is the study of the world or universe, okay? Including its origin, dynamics, and its characteristics, as well as the laws that govern its order. And here are some questions in cosmology, basic questions in cosmology. What is the origin of the world? Okay, what is the origin of the world? How is this? How is the basic material of which the world is formed? How do things arise? What consists its fundamental form or principle of order? Is the world or universe infinite? When we say infinite, it's limitless. Okay. Uh, Boundless. Okay. Okay. Now we go to psychology. Psychology comes from the two Greek words psyche, which means soul, mind, but this is loosely understood his mind, and logos meaning study. So psychology is the specific sub-branch of philosophy that studies the soul and the mind, or mind. But construed through psychology, broadly construed through psychology, is the study of the nature and the dynamics of the human person. And that's not the union, but the human person as a whole, with emphasis on the ways person's mind functions and the way she behaves. Okay, so here are the basic questions of psychology. What is the nature of the human person? Is there such thing as human nature? What is the meaning and purpose, if any, of life? Is there life after this? How do we account for existence of sufferings in the world? And lastly, we have theodicy, okay, or natural theology. Then we say theodicy is derived from the Greek word theos, which means God. And the word theodicy was being coined by the famous 18th century German philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Levinas, and in his 1710 work titled Theodicy. And broadly, this is construed theodicy as the study of God. And specifically, theodicy is concerned with justification of the goodness of God in the face of the existence of evil in the world. So here are some basic questions in theodicy. Is there God? Okay. What and who God? Who is God, if He exists at all? How do we prove the existence of God? If God exists, how do we justify the existence of evil and suffering in the world? Does a belief in God really necessary? Okay. Now we go to the next branch of philosophy, and this is epistemology. Okay, epistemology coming from the two Greek word episteme, which means knowledge, and logos, which means study. And it's normally defined as a study of the nature and scope of knowledge and justified belief. So you can just imagine epistemology is the study of knowledge. When we say study, then we study knowledge. Okay, so episteme, logos, the study of knowledge, and specifically, as it's formally defined as the study of the nature and scope of knowledge and justified belief, and it analyzes the nature of knowledge and how it relates to similar notions such as truth, belief, and justification. Truth, knowledge, and belief. So here's some basic questions in epistemology. What is knowledge? How do we know? How is knowledge acquired? What are the structures and limits of knowledge? And what makes justified beliefs to justify? Now we go to the third major branch of philosophy is logic. Okay, so we always hear this logic, which is one of the major branches of philosophy, which is logic. And logic is come from the Greek word logos, and this is the science of correct thinking. So, of course, in contrast with incorrect thinking. When we say logic, this is the study of the principles and criteria of valid judgment, and also this distinguishes sound or good reasoning from unsound and bad reasoning. Okay. So we may be asking some questions like, if the ground is wet, which means it rained. So that's a logic. If we see smoke coming from the middle of the forest, so there must be someone setting fire. So that's logic. Okay. If I have 3 seeds in my pocket, the first two seeds are blocked, which means the presumption is that the third seed it's going to block. So these are what we call the science of correct thinking, or there is an order of thinking. Okay. And here are basic questions in logic. What is the correct reasoning? What distinguishes a good argument from bad one? How can we detect a fallacy in an argument? When we say fallacy, this is false. Okay, false reasoning. So, which means if 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 I if the television advertises a certain uh, vitamins, then I'll I'll become intelligent or smart. But it's a fallacy. It doesn't actually follow that when you drink that advertised vitamins, you will become smart or intelligent, because actually it's genetically inherited of becoming also smart and intelligent, or it may be acquired for that matter. So usually there are a lot of fallacy statements in advertisements that we watch in the television. So that and that is part of uh, the correct science of correct thinking. So we detect fallacy in argument. Okay. Now, and also, what are the criteria in determining the validity of an argument, and what are the types of logic? Okay. Now we go to the last major branch of philosophy, and this is ethics. When we say ethics, ethos, coming from the Greek words ethos, which means custom or habit. So, what we're used to do, or custom or habit, and morality. We can also describe as morality of human actions, or how human persons ought to act, and the search for a definition of a right conduct in the good life. But let us be clear that ethics is not the same with morality, because when we say ethics, it's more on theory. But when we say morality, it's more on practice. Okay, because that ethics denotes the theory or right action in the greater good, while morality indicates practice, that is the rightness and wrongness of human person. So we may be saying, we may be ethically correct, but we are morally wrong. Okay, okay, so we may be ethically correct, but morally wrong. And ethics is more in theory, while morality is more in practice. And here are some questions on in ethics. So, what is the right conduct, as that which causes the realization of the greatest good? How do we determine the right conduct? In other words, what makes a right conduct right? What's a good life, and can we attain it? And what's the difference between human act and actions that are based or instinct? And what do people think is right? Okay, so we just have the introduction and the four major branches of philosophy. I hope that you're also taking down notes. If you have some clarifications, you can ask for our next meeting. Um, I'll be posting to our Google Classroom for some justifications, and then 1 hour discussions. And I'll be entertaining your questions if there are. If there are some questions that you'd like to ask from this lecture or video lecture. So thank you for listening, and hope to get some feedback from you. Remember that philosophy, the start of philosophizing is is questioning, and the more we question, the more we philosophize. Thank you.